Hey everybody, welcome back to Record-ology. Here we are. It is timestamp 1:56 p.m. East Coast time on Saturday, June 17th, 2023. And today marks a slightly somber occasion for me. If you've been here for a long time, you will know that one of my favorite things to do every year back in Colorado was to go to the World War II ball or World War II festival. Welcome in, everybody. Thumbs up on the way in the door if you don't mind. So today, every June 17th, back in Boulder, Colorado, is actually when they have this event, and it's got the Glenn Miller Orchestra. It's got a Frank Sinatra impersonator that's amazing. There's multiple like 30s and 40s vendors, like dozens of them, airplanes, cars. There's an air show. There's skydiving. There's plenty of big band music, jazz music. Dandy Wellington is there. There's just so many artists that are recreating that music. And I have been going, hey, Gary, welcome in. Super Prince, welcome in. I have been going every year since 2017, which was the first year that I ever went. And every year I've documented it on the show. So you can go back. Thanks for the celebration emoji. I appreciate it. You can go back and check that out. And today is the first day that I am missing it. And I'm a bit sad. It was sort of a tradition that my dad and I had. And I remember last year, again, knowing this trip was coming for so long, I had toyed with the idea of going back. And I thought about doing that. But then I was like, no, maybe I'll go another year. It's okay. It's not the end of the world. And actually, the current iteration of the Glenn Miller Orchestra, led by Eric Stabnow, is fantastic. But I preferred just a little bit the previous leader, Nick Hilscher, who was fantastic, and he's gone on to bigger and better things. So it wouldn't have him anyway, and it just hasn't been the same since he retired from the orchestra. That being said, it was a very fun night, and I can't wait to watch the replay video. But that was cool because had complete access. It usually was anywhere on stage. We could go up on the stage, or I should say I could. My dad didn't care to do that. He just kind of wandered around and talked to everybody, and he loves that kind of interaction. Hey, Michelle, welcome in. And then last year I went, the coordinator was like, oh, yeah, you actually have like a full VIP pass. There was like catered food and everything. So it was a very special time. I hope to go again in the future, but I haven't missed since 2017. So that was a little bit of a bummer, but is it worth the cost and the time to go out there for one night? Not really. So anyway, it is the 17th. And this to me has always been sort of like a turning point in summer, even though we're not technically even in summer. This sort of feels, at least back in Colorado, like the halfway point. Now here in Florida, we were just talking about this earlier. There's like no delineation between seasons. You just kind of feel like it's always summer, and which is better than always winter, what Colorado felt like. But there's like no delineation from one to the next. It's always hot. You may be saying to yourself, Record-ology, are you wearing a hoodie? What are you doing? This is a very cool hoodie, by the way. Binford Tools. Got to rep the Tool Man. My favorite show of all time. Why are you wearing a hoodie? It is like, and it literally is like 94 degrees or something with like 500% humidity out there. I'm actually a little bit cold today. It's very strange. I started getting chilled yesterday. Now, everywhere around here has air conditioning on 24/7, full blast. So when you go into a restaurant or a store, they don't, if it happens to be cooler out there, if it's raining, if it's windy or whatever, the temperature takes a rare dip, below the 80s and 90s. They just keep that air conditioning going full blast. So a lot of times what happens is you can freeze yourself going in places. Anyway, I got chilled, and it's very strange, but hey, I got a reason to wear the hoodie. I was actually, before I went on camera, I was wearing one of those Snuggies. It was this pink Snuggie. Almost wore it on, but the shock factor of me wearing the pink Snuggie, I don't want to get banned off of YouTube because I would look a little silly wearing that on camera. So toned it down with this, but things are good. Happy Father's Day. Yes, to everybody that's a father or has a father. If your father is around, count yourself blessed, and you make the time to, give him a call, go see him if you can. And for those that don't have that option, my heart goes out to you. the real important things, the real important things are your people, and that's your people and your experiences. And that's something that I learned the hard way. That's one of the most valuable lessons my wife has taught me, and she's taught me a lot, is that accumulating stuff, while fun, is so superfluous. It's so not important in the long run that, you look back and you think to yourself, are you gonna, go to the grave and think to yourself, well, I got a lot of cool junk, or are you gonna think about all those moments you had with the people you love? So there, I don't mean to go down the downer trail at all, but happy Father's Day, and keep in mind, keep prioritize is what I'm trying to say. So, and my priorities are getting to spend time with my friends and family, of which you guys are both. And I'm so thankful that you are here. So welcome in, everybody. And Gary, let's see, 2 p.m, and Michelle. So we're, hitting you in the evening hours, but at least it's not middle of the night. But thank you for being there. We're going to talk Beatles here in a minute. It seems like people have really liked that topic. And did you guys get thrown into a video before this started? It was a short showing the latest Beatles record. I'm curious. Honey Coachman, another friend from England, Southampton. I have one question. Were you happy the Denver Nuggets won MB5? Yeah, absolutely. I've been a Nuggets fan. When I say fan, I've got a hat, I've got a shirt, and I've been to a couple of less than 5 games my entire life. But absolutely. Oh, Michael, you just got here in time. We've just started about 5 minutes ago. And if I missed your comment, my apologies. I'll try to get back around to it. Feel free to put it back in. Super Prince says it's okay here in New York City. Very comfortable weather. That's good. And anyway, yeah, so glad to have you here. Can somebody let me know, did you get prompted to watch a short about my Beatles Red album before this live started? I'm curious, because there's a setting in there where you can have YouTube serve that up before you get admitted to the live. I'm curious if it actually did that. Michelle says, I have the Beatles. Okay, Super Price Prince. So, yeah, sorry, keep calling you the wrong name. Michelle says, I have the Beatles Red and Blue albums too. Red one is on red vinyl. And that's like a repressing that I've heard. Again, I'm a baby here. I'm just learning this stuff. And it's been fun. I've really enjoyed it. If you would have asked me a year ago about collecting the Beatles, I would have said, well, I'm a greatest hits fan and I'm happy being that. Still a bit intimidated because there's so much out there, so many different versions. I have found, where in the world is that record? I always tell myself I'm going to have my visual aids ready to go before the show starts, and I never manage to do it. So let me try here. Okay, that looks like okay, yeah. So in terms of 12-inch vinyl now, I have these guys. So it's a good start. And I know that's not the be-all, end-all, but you guys recommended that I start there. So I did. I got this one, I think last weekend, $23 at a record shop out on the East Coast. I think it was Beachside Retro. And cosmetically, it's in pretty good condition. The playing surface has some superficial scratches. So it's got some pops and things. But again, I'm looking for very affordable. Somebody said about the other one, which I got for $13. I said, why would you buy the cheapest one you could find? Well, sometimes the show's always been about doing this on the cheap, about finding the best deals and things. So that's what it's all about to me. Plus, I'm not, necessarily needing to drop $50 on a brand new copy of this right now. I'm happy to find a used copy. So then I bought this off eBay this week and it arrived right away. $13 plus like 3 or 4 shipping. And it got here right away. And it stunk really, really bad, like cigarette smoke. And some people are like, oh, I smoke, so I wouldn't notice that. And somebody else was like, if you don't like smoke smell, then you better find a new hobby. That being said, I have run across very few like smoke drenched items in doing this from all sources, eBay, vinyl shops, et cetera, et cetera. The worst, and actually worse than this one even, was that Magnavox reel-to-reel that I had from 1968. I had that for a few years, and I totally had to fumigate that thing for a good year, leaving it kind of sitting with a plate of bicarbonate soda underneath it, a lot of like air freshener things, just letting it sit outside in the fresh air. And it finally came around to where it didn't. If you stuck your face in there, you would still smell it a tiny bit, but it didn't just reek like the second you turned it on. Because for a while, when you turned it on and that fan came on, it was pretty rough. Anyway, so this made me gag, literally. I didn't say that just for shock factor. Was not expecting. I mean, it's, whatever. And people said, did he disclose it? Yeah, he did. He had a picture of one of the labels. The only thing is, since he only included one picture of the label, I thought that only one label looked bad, but it turns out 3 out of the 4 are pretty rough. But yeah, no, he disclosed that, and I feel like it was an honest deal. And I realized I was taking a risk. The playing surface on this, though, even though the labels are trash, are really good. It sounds good. It's way cleaner and more vibrant than the other. This is, I believe, an American Apple pressing. I don't think this is Capitol. There is a Capitol runout matrix stamp on this guy right here. So I believe this is a Capitol issue, but it looks like it's got the Apple on the back there, and it just says copyright Apple on the disc label. So does this one, but the runout on here is a little different. So I need to look at the matrix and do a little bit of research, but I'm glad to have it. I mean, it serves the purpose. I just wanted some vinyl to play. I wasn't like, okay, I'm going to collect everything. I'm going to collect, the best of everything. And I'm very thankful to have these. It's what I wanted, compilations. And, I would love to find albums. I would love to find more. If I had an unlimited budget, like the stereo or mono box sets, either on CD or vinyl, would probably be the ultimate. Any of the albums would be a treat. I'm just learning about this stuff. I've got some singles too. But I love learning about this. There's a YouTube account. And if you guys are Beatles fans, I would recommend checking this out. You probably wouldn't learn as much as I did because you probably already knew this. But there is, let me see if I can find it. Yeah, Parlogram. The YouTube channel is just called Parlogram, and he does these videos about everything everything. I just watched one yesterday about the Beatles on CD, talking about the 1986 issues of the first 4 albums are not so good because they used a stereo tape deck to transfer mono tape, and that the 1987 issues were fantastic, and that some of the 2009 reissues weren't as good as the 1987 issues, and that the mono box is way different than the stereo box, more so than just being mono versus stereo. And it's fascinating to me. So I just love that. I love learning little, my poor wife, I've just been inundating her with trivia and things as I learn. But that's the way I am. I become super obsessed about something, and 24/7, I just consume it 24/7. Okay, let's see here. I'm gonna get caught up on comments. Thank you for indulging me, my friends. Again, if I miss a comment, my apologies, are not intentional. I'll try to get back to all of them. If worst case scenario, just put it down in the comment or in the chat again. About the Denver Nuggets, I wasn't happy to see all of the garbage that happened after. Why do people have to riot when that kind of stuff happens? That's just sad. You know what I mean? I was really disappointed. And of course, that's what makes the news. It's just a bummer. Michael Levoti? You're late. Hi, all. Oh, yeah. I greeted you earlier and said you weren't that late. We just started. I had the Beatles red and blue albums too. Red is not red. Oh, yeah. We talked about that. Sorry. I'm trying to find my place. Gary got no prompt. Sugar Prince did. Michelle says, on Record Store Day, I got a nice Lion King soundtrack on orange vinyl. That's awesome. Michael says, I've got the blue, still looking for a red, not scratched or worn out. And yeah, this one is, the playing surface is great, but cosmetics aren't that good. Then what you do about cleaning the paper materials, like the sleeves, the jacket and stuff. So I'm like, okay, this isn't like a super rare thing, right? I just tried to get a playable copy. That was the goal. That's what I did. And I don't want this thing reeking. I'd rather, and this sounds horrible, I would rather cause some superficial damage to it by eliminating the odor than by having just a stinky record that's in slightly better condition. So I actually took a Clorox wipe. I know you guys, well, that's the worst thing you could do, to the paper, right? To the actual cover. And I gently, and it came off like pitch black. It was disgusting. There was some kind of food stain down here. I'm still glad I did it. And actually after it dried, it was fine. I cannot figure out for the life of me what happened to these poor labels. This is the least damaged of the three. There's one that's a little better than actually, this might be the best one. So yeah, it's got three really rough ones. Some they're just like white paper and you can't read anything. What happened to this? It looks like water damage, right? Doesn't it look like it got flooded? But I was thinking, if it got flooded, wouldn't the jack be destroyed as well? So maybe the records were someplace that, they were underwater for like a year or something, and hopefully it was just water. You know what I mean? So yeah, interesting. So what do you prefer, vintage turntables from the 70s, 80s, or the modern turntables? Sugar Prince, that's Super Prince. Why do I keep saying Sugar Prince? I'm sorry, you guys. Super Prince, not Sugar Price. I think I've called you everything under the sun. I'm sorry. So what do I prefer? I'll just call you SP for short. SP, what do I prefer? I can't decide. Like right now, I've got a 1981 Technics changer and a 1981-82 Technics direct drive and a 2022 Pioneer PLX 500. And I love them all. Although I'm kind of thinking that I'm going to change out for a while the direct drive unit with something else. And that's just because I'll get bored of one because I use it so much. So I was thinking about, what to, and I'll just put it in storage. And then eventually when I got the craving to play with this one again, it depends. I've had some new turntables that are just so fantastic that there's nothing wrong with them whatsoever. One of the best turntables, and I've had two of them, and I've sold both because I thought I was upgrading. But in actuality, for both times, I kind of regret selling it because for what the price was, it was a fantastic turntable. And it was the Crosley C200, the direct drive. And again, made by these guys up here, hand-pinned turntables. Solid, really solid. Doesn't have the internal weights that the Pioneers and the Audio-Technica versions do. It was only 2 speeds, but the motor stability was better than any of these Technics or the Pioneer. It was, and it didn't even have a quartz lock. It was literally just calibrated perfectly. This thing is a beautiful turntable, but it drifts a bit. There's a lot of cogging on it. Not a lot. There's a little bit of cogging on it, but there's a lot of wobble on that platter. I actually sent a video to Pioneer. I'm like, is this normal? Like, do you consider this in spec? And they said, yeah, that's within spec. So kind of a bummer. The Technics SLB5 changer, beautiful turntable, a little bit of cogging, tiny bit of wobble, not bad at all. The motor stability on the SLDL1 is probably the best speed consistency of the 3 here. Yeah, and again, I don't think it has a quartz. I think it's got a servo speed control. I don't think it has a quartz lock. I don't know what else I'm going to put, what I would change this out for. I toyed around with just like an LP60. I don't even know. I did sell or donate or give away quite a few turntables before we left. I did bring a bunch as well, and we've accumulated a bunch. So we'll have to see, and more are on the way. So we'll try to keep it interesting. Honey Coachman says, I have the Beatles Red album. I have Abbey Road on the Australian Green edition vinyl and Revolver on a picture disc. That's awesome. SP says, unfortunately, I only own one Beatles on vinyl. That was me until yesterday when the Red album arrived. I've got like 5 singles, and the Blue album I picked up last weekend. Before that, it was the 8-track, part 1 of the Red album on 8-track. One of you guys actually is sending me part 2 to the Red album on 8-track, which is great. When you guys donate stuff, that's really, really nice. And the CD, the number 1's CD that I have, which is a great compilation as well. So I'm learning about the music, and it's not the first time I had ever been down the rabbit hole of the Beatles. I have in the 90s, I got into them and a lot of kind of like 60s music before I went like super deep into big band and sort of the vintage culture of the 40s and the 30s and the 50s. I was very much into that for a long, long time. I've always listened to a little bit of everything, but there was a few days that I didn't listen to Glenn Miller. But before that, I went through a several year period where I got a little bit, maybe elbow deep in the Beatles on compact disc. Back then, in the mid 90s, I had no desire to do anything besides CDs. That was the be all and end all of physical media. And I didn't have any interest in, records were, not something I want. I didn't want a bulky, huge, expensive record. I wanted something that was digital, and I was totally caught up in that, the digital lossless thing. And so I had Please Please Me on CD. I think I might have had Revolver, and I had the anthology, one of the anthologies, I think the third one, the one with Eleanor Rigby on it. And for a period of time, I was listening to a lot of Mamas and the Papas. I was listening to a lot of just that stuff. I had the honor of going to what in Denver they called the Cool Concert. And every year, Cool 105, which was at the time, their 50s and 60s retro rock and roll radio station, would host the Cool Concert. And usually they had one or two pretty big name artists from the 50s or 60s. Well, one year, and this is like 95, 96-ish, maybe 94, I think 95. I'm going to say 95. They had like the be all end all Cool Concert, and they had a lineup of 15 big names. We're talking Chuck Berry, The Temptations, the Mamas and the Papas, what were left of them. Johnny Rivers. I mean, all these artists were just crazy. And I woke up at the grocery store there, Kroger, or our Kroger was called King Supers, had the ticket sales. And I got there before they opened, and the lady literally pushed the button the second they went on sale. And I managed to get like row 19 or something at the old Mile High Stadium. May it rest in peace. And my dad and I went. And that was a very memorable. Keep coming back to the dad stuff today. That's cool. But yeah, absolutely. It was like nothing else. It was a bizarre time. It was a good time. I say it was bizarre because there was a lot of people. It was probably the first like big concert I had been in where people were, sketchy things were happening. I'll just say that, but it was still a very fun event and a huge blessing to do that. So yeah, I did go through a phase many years ago. So I remember some of this stuff, but I still look at all these 10 or 11 albums they had. I know there's the UK versions, there's the US versions, there's all these thoughts on which are the best of each and which don't. And apparently the Red and Blue albums have mostly singles, non-album versions. And then I know about the Past Masters set and all this stuff. So I'm just learning it a bit, underwater in terms of trying to come up to speed on it. Money isn't everything, says Michael, although you'd be hard pressed to see that in the hobby lately. I'm grateful for Discogs, my local shop, to allow me to do this on the cheap. Same, exactly. That's where we got our start. That's our bread and butter here at Record-ology, meaning that's what we're always about, is doing things on the cheap. Yes, I could go to just Amazon.com and buy the newest pressing of every record, but I don't think that would be as fun. You know what I mean? Like the hunt, the thrill of the hunt, the search, that's part of why I love this hobby, and never lose sight of the fact it's merely a hobby, because it's like, what version did I get? Is it a good copy? Is it a bad copy? What story can the record tell? And again, I'm not going to go into this in great detail again, because so many people have heard this many, many times. My goal in this channel originally was to review records more than turntable. I never even thought of reviewing. I never thought anybody would. I didn't know what demo units were or review samples. So my thought was to just get any old cheap record and learn about it. Search up on Discogs when it was pressed, what year came out, what the music version is on it or whatever. And just to kind of savor that experience of having a record, and not even a thought do the best copy, the biggest copy, the most important copy, the rarest copy, the best sounding version, none of that. And obviously, as I was building my collection initially, all the vinyl I bought was like augmenting what I listened to on the daily, which was mostly streaming or digital files. Many, many years I went with no physical media, hardly at all. I kind of drifted away from CDs, and I was huge on CDs. And to this day, I am again in the early 2000s. And to me, what was interesting was an MP3 player. And I knew the quality wasn't quite as good as a CD. And I knew that there were sacrifices in terms of not having physical media to look at. That I used to love liner notes and stuff like that, jackets, the artwork, the physical asset, to actually own the asset. But at the same time, the novelty of I can fit 10,000 songs on here was so interesting to me that I was fascinated. And you know what? We were raising a family, and we had kids and we had priorities, and almost all of that, not all the kids, of course. Let me rephrase it. All of the kids and most of the other priorities came way before anything that we would do for, ourselves. So any kind of toy, quote unquote, toy or audio equipment, that whatever was left after, buying diapers and food and entertaining the kids and supporting them, their school and extracurriculars, and obviously the time spent with them, that was what was important. And we had a good sense of that. I feel like we had a really good sense of that. So those priorities never impeded on. I was never buying like the thought. I'd hear about people spending like $700 on a sound bar or all this stuff. So I was a late adopter to almost every technology. I was a late adopter to compact disc. I was a late adopter to MP3s. I didn't have a real iPod until many, many, many years later. And so I was always kind of behind the eight ball on that, which was fine. That was, my priorities weren't an MP3 player, but it made for an interesting journey. I'm doing great today, Michael. Thank you for asking. I'll jump back into comments here in a minute and we'll talk about some more Beatles records. But yeah, it's been a lot of fun. And then, I held on to my CDs. I knew I had enough wherewithal to realize, well, I shouldn't throw these away because it's a huge investment. But I wasn't digging out CDs. They sat in boxes in the basement for many, many years. And then, I got into this again, and it started off just to augment. I have a few records. That was my original intention. And listen to a few of my favorite CDs and maybe get a couple of tapes. And then pretty much I've got, thousands of things. And do I need them? No. It's all superfluous. None of it matters. But yeah, I've got the opportunity. I'm thankful. I'm very thankful. But I've always kept that perspective, though, if that makes any sense. I've always kept the perspective of what's important and what's not. So for me, having just a few of something is fine. The Patsy Cline thing was probably the deepest I'd ever dove into collecting vinyl because I wanted a complete collection. Part of that was the fact that you could buy those records for pretty cheap and you could find them rather accessibly. And there wasn't that many. I mean, we're talking less than 10 official releases. So, when I thought about, oh yeah, I'm going to collect Jackie Gleason as well. I'm going to collect Glenn Miller. I've collected a lot. I've been blessed. A lot of people have donated a lot of Glenn Miller to me. But Peggy Lee, same thing, like so many albums. She had like 30 albums or something, very overwhelming. So again, keeping that same perspective on the Beatles, I'm not stopping until I'm done. I don't know and somebody put it in this way, they phrased it in this way. It's like, it's sort of like you're itching a scratch. You know what I mean? Or pursuing an interest that may be temporary. Maybe tomorrow I wake up and I'm like, okay, on to bigger and better things. And maybe not. I'm having fun though. So as long as it lasts, I'm here for it. And my interests are very cyclical. So let's say I burn out on Beatles, I will be back in a matter of months or maybe a couple of years and really be thankful for what I had collected before. Yeah, that reel-to-reel SP. It was not the Akai, but the Magnavox. I never could get it right. Was it Magnavox or It wasn't Memorex. I think it was Magnavox. It was really made by Panasonic, I believe. Great unit and small and compact. But yeah, the thing stunk. But I got it for free, so I can't complain. It took a good year to fumigate that. The Akai is still working like a champ. The only problem is the left channel input jack has a short, so I need to resolder the RCA input jack once I get around to it. Right now, I can sort of manipulate and find a contact point. Interesting. What about your favorite record? Oh, that's so tough because it depends. I've had many favorite types. For a long time, it was the Patsy Cline debut self-titled album, 1957. DL8611, I think it is. And I got a few versions of that, all for a good price. I feel like are a fair price. The only one I paid a little bit more for was I wanted the original black and silver Decca label version. Most of what you find out there of that album is the 1960 reprint with the rainbow Decca label. So I did pay a little bit more to get that. Then I got a hold of it, and the stupid record has permanent fingerprints that can't be cleaned, wiped, or spun clean off. The only thing I haven't tried is I haven't tried an ultrasonic cleaner. Somebody's been telling me lately I really got to give it a try. We might just do that. Final Rage says, I received my... Whoa, I lost the comments. I'm sorry. Let me see. I received, Vinyl Rage says, I have received my first direct drive turntable yesterday, the Marantz TT2000 for free. All it's missing is a dust cover clips, but I believe some compatible clips online. Oh, that's really cool. That's a blessing, dude. Is that the kind where you can program it like a CD player and choose which track? I've played with a couple of those. Very, very cool. The one I have now is just start and stop and auto repeat, which is fine. You can still queue up any song manually, but you can't like say play track 3. But that's totally fine. It's still a beast and a gorgeous work of engineering and art. What's the best way to remove pops from records? What's the best way to clean your records? SP, great question. We've done so many videos about that. My personal favorite method for deep clean records is a spin clean, which is where you put a water and a cleaner solution in this vat with these rollers, and then you kind of turn the record like this. And there's other versions that you can get. The industry standard is the spin clean. And I was saying the other day that it was like $200, but no, I guess it's like more like 100 if you get the cheapo one that doesn't come with as many rags. It's like somewhere between 90 something and 120 in that range. That cleans records. Like you'll take a reg, and I've done some before and after videos that would make you just your eyes pop out because it was so amazing. Like you just rotate the record in there a couple times each way, and it comes out with a polish on there, all kinds of grit and junk in the water. It's absolutely amazing. So that's a great way to deep clean, the best way to deep clean it. That being said, that gets rid of 99, I'd say 98, 99% of pops and crackles on a record. However, older vinyl that had, and especially like 50s and 60s, I'm looking at you, but pre-1970, I would say, the vinyl material can degrade itself. So there can be little micro cracks and pitting and things in the vinyl that isn't dirt. And those pops or those little cracks and pivot pits and things can sound the same as a dirty record. So I've got some, slightly worn 50s and 60s records that just have degraded vinyl. And and I'm sure it's due to environmental, to stay in the humidity for 30 years or to stay in an arid climate. But sometimes you just clean, and you just can't get it cleaned out. So it depends. But yeah, that's what I've learned. And I've had some that I thought I couldn't resurrect from the dead, and I brought them back, and they've just sounded clean and silent. Michelle says, I got a Capitol Beatles, my Blue album, think it's Canadian. That's cool. Maximilian, hello from Germany. Max says, my first was the Blue album. Mine too. That's the one I got last weekend. I mean, I'm just starting, you guys. The Blue, and then yesterday, the Red. So I've got a good start. And I know they're not the greatest. $23 for one and $13 for the other. But it's the level of record I was looking for. I wasn't trying to find the best ever. I was trying to find listenable, playable copies. Condensation on the label? Yeah, Gary, that could be the cause of the label degradation on there for sure. Haunted Coachman, somebody cleaned it in water in the sink. That's possible too. That's possible too. SP says, so what's better, belt or direct drive? Your thoughts? I don't think one is necessarily better than the other. The long-standing sort of consensus is that a belt drive turntable is a higher fidelity device because it isolates the motor noise from the tone arm. The belt itself acts as a sort of a shock absorber. And so the vibrations that the motor, and every motor, no matter how cheap or how good it is, will have some sort of vibrations. Taking that out of the mix by putting a rubber band, a rubber belt between the two, is from a sonic and fidelity standpoint the best. But then you have concerns belts need to be replaced. That being said, I don't think I've ever had a turntable that I had to replace the belt more than once. It's not like every year I got to put a new belt in that thing. It's like, well, I got a used one, needs a new belt, and now it's fine. Or, one degraded and broke, and then it gets replaced once. And cartridges too. I think people way over replace things, or they think they need to. But yeah, you look at the highest end turntables. You look at the real estate turntables, the ones that are tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars. Those are all going to be belt drive. The other side of the thought process is direct drive, like these two ones are, is better because this has more torque. The record comes up to speed faster. And but there's thought that a direct drive motor, since there's no isolation between the motor and the pickup device, the cartridge, the stylus, that those vibrations can be transferred. There can be ringing on the metal platter. There can be noise, unwanted noise. Personally, on the level of audio equipment I listen to, I've never heard anything that I'm like, oh yeah, that's because it's direct drive. But still, that being said, super high-end turntables for the most part are not direct drive. They are usually belt driven. And the belt or the direct drive turntables are usually for DJ work. In order to scratch and use a slip mat and all that stuff, you need a direct drive turntable. I like them because oftentimes they have the stroboscopic platter, and it allows you to set the speed perfectly. So my sort of personal required feature, whether it be belt driven or direct drive, is that it's got a strobe and I can set the pitch perfectly. I've learned that I cannot handle a turntable that's got the wrong speed. Michael says, I've seen labels like that happen to folks overclean their albums. It's spray. Okay. Destroyed everything over time. Yeah, that could very well be, although there's nothing really clean about this. I've also reviewed before. I don't have any handy right now. They make these little rubber protective discs that you can put over the label when you do a spray clean application. And obviously when you do a spin clean, you don't fill it up so that it touches the label. You fill it up so that the top of the water is in the dead wax. I'm showing you all this down here like you can see, but you can't. Gary says direct drive came later, so why would you do that if it was not better? Probably to address the specific needs for DJs that popped up in the 70s and 80s. Realizing you can't scratch on a belt drive. They don't have the right torque, all of that stuff. There's like this direct drive turntables exist in both the sort of middle range of turntables, like the $300 to $700 range, which to a lot of us sounds like, well, that's a high-end turntable. Anything costs that much. But to a lot of people, that's considered a mid-level turntable. Once you get into the 1,000 mark and above, you don't see, sometimes you do. SL 1200s, okay. So that's the exception. The SL 1200 series will be $1,500 easy. But for the most part, once you get higher end turntables, they're all belt driven. So I think the direct drive is specifically for that DJ work that didn't exist before music that required that functionality it came to be. SP says, I have 4 turntables. 2 of them, my PLX 1000 I DJ with. When I have the Insignia turntable, that's the Best Buy turntable you gave me for one of your Christmases. My number 1 playback turntable is the Audio-Technica LP120 XUSB. Still regret selling that. And after time, I feel like I like the Audio-Technica LPX 120X a little better than the PLX 500. Just a hair. It has a really good fit and finish. Oh, this is close, but I think I would edge it out with the LP120X. If I ever get my hands on one or a 140, I would probably find a new home for this, although it is cool. P says, some people prefer the belt-driven turntables to... Absolutely. It goes for some of the reel-to-reel cassette decks. Yeah, absolutely. Direct drive tape decks. It's funny. As a kid, I always thought that... I never realized that a Walkman or most tape decks are belt-driven. I don't know why. I just thought in my head there was gears connecting everything. Shows you how much I knew. Not much. Belt-driven CD players. Almost all CD players are belt-driven. Max says, SP, what Beatles record do you have? I'd love to hear that too. He has Abbey Road. Very cool. Michael says, absolutely, as an artist who painted album covers on denim jackets in high school, that's cool. An album cannot be beat for both the amazing artwork and all of the liner notes and lyrics. Absolutely. It's that slow down and encounter your music and spend some time with it. Because what happened with that MP3 craze is we all got caught up into listening while we're driving, listening while we're working. It was like an indirect activity. Kyle says, I'm actually playing guitar now. I know how to play the guitar or how to play the Fairly Odd Parents theme song. That's cool, Kyle. Maximilian says, Parlogram, in my opinion, is the best channel for Beatles. It seems like he knows everything. I've been learning a lot. SP says, Daft Punk Random Access Memories is also a great album on vinyl, and Pink Floyd Dark Side of the Moon. SP says, I have so many favorite vinyls. However, those are two I played recently and recorded onto reel-to-reel cassette. Yeah, that's awesome. Oh, really? It was a D grade to record them down? Interesting. It's a deal with the secret ending to Sergeant Pepper. See, I don't even know this stuff. And there's this whole like conspiracy thing. And I remember for years my dad, because my dad had back from when he listened to vinyl records, we just sort of carried him around for decades. He had a handful of Beatles albums. He used to tell me about the Butcher cover of the White Album, and he told me about Abbey Road, how everybody's dressed like a different person involved in a funeral. You've got the person wearing no shoes. He was the person being buried. You've got the undertaker. You've got who had like the work boots. You've got the pastor and all of this stuff. And the Turn Me On Dead Man and number nine, and the walrus and all these things. All these levels, peel the onion back of the layers of the onions is interesting to me. I'm looking forward to discovering more. Absolutely. Yeah, Punk, Random Access Memories. Yeah, strobe. You have to have a strobe. Cal says Audio Technica Walmart version. I have not picked that up yet. I need to. I'm sure it's identical. Gary says Matexa Sins RTR, very expensive and not very good, really. So sometimes spending more isn't necessarily a good thing. Audiophile is not the best. What does it do that's not as good? Direct drive came before scratching. Okay, fair enough. Max says most CD players are not belt driven. I am not talking about the loading mechanisms. I mean the spindle. Oh, okay, yeah. Yeah. Those are mostly directly driven from a motor. Well, even on that clear one we reviewed recently. Do I have it up here? No, it's in storage. You could turn it over and see the two motors, one directly on the spindle and one driving the carriage. Okay, fair point. But the carriage part would always be belt, right? And then obviously if you have a drawer loading mechanism. If you listen to the music digitally, the best format, in my thoughts, are FLAC. Yeah, a lot of people like FLAC. Lossless audio is great. The gibberish at the end of Sgt. Pepper did not appear in North America until the CD release. Really? So there's like a whole generation of people that learned that. You know what I've discovered? The last song on the what was it, on the Past Masters album? Something about You Know My Name or something. That's a bizarre song. You Know My Name. And I've been listening to that a lot. If my friend Tim Allen was here, he'd laugh. You Know My Name. That's a weird song, but it's good. Where is it? I thought it was the last song. Oh, wait, I'm looking at the wrong album. And it's so weird. Like my dad always says too. He's like, no two songs of theirs are the same. They never repeated themselves, which not a lot of bands can say that. You Know My Name. Oops. You Know My Name. Look up the number. That's a weird song, like jazzy. I like it. And I was reading about the guy that did the saxophone was this guy from the Rolling Stones, I think, or maybe it was Pink Floyd. I don't know. See, I'm very much out of my league here. I don't know what I'm talking about. Better stop spouting before I tick somebody off. Huge FLAC fan, and my entire digital library is recorded that way. Gary keeps home in Texas and Sins. Flutter 2%. Wow, $70,000. Why did they leave it like that? Like, why is that allowed? Seen it, I just didn't buy it. Michelle says ABBA's Super Trooper album has a locked groove. So is that for the DJs specifically? Did they do that for the DJs? The only locked groove I have, well, the radio transcriptions, those little 10-inch ones I picked up a few years ago. Those are all, I think those all have locked groove. And then my Ortophone test disc has a locked groove too. Kyle says, I bought the Audio-Technica because you encouraged me to buy an Audio-Technica. I'm glad you did because it's been the best record player I've ever had so far. I'm great. Glad to hear that. Steve says, yes, Brian Jones of the Stones played it on. Yeah, Brian Jones. M&S looks beautiful. Yeah, I've seen some of these tape recorders that are like just crazy. Like they're like desk types they're just massive. I saw when my wife was in the studio a couple of years ago, we went to this studio that had a 16-track, 2-inch tape machine. And it was beautiful. It was a work of art. They had like these dim lights shining on it and stuff. It's like a museum piece. And it was in the recording booth. I'm like, does anybody use this? And he's like, oh yeah, people love the idea of using this until they realize how much 2-inch magnetic tape is and how much they need of it. So yeah, I love tape though. I love magnetic tape. Again, I didn't realize I would get into that format really, but I sort of naturally led there. The complete 100% sound isolation, channel isolation is where it's at, and the fidelity of a tape is pretty much better than any record I've ever heard. I mean, I feel like tapes, reel-to-reel tapes, were the high fidelity format of the 50s and 60s, and so to have an album on reel-to-reel, my friend Fardemark actually has a Beatles reel-to-reel album. Not a cheap thing to have. I've seen one for $100 once, but yeah, I'm just not going to spend money on that much for something like that. I would love to have one if I came across it, but yeah, just learning about it and learning about the 4-track stacked versus not stacked, and learning the hard way about that one. And 4-track, 2-track, all the different speeds. Kind of the only 15-inch machine we ever reviewed was an Akai, the thing I called the boat anchor. They had the built-in 8-track machine. There was an adapter where you could run it at 15 IPS, but mostly just consumer stuff, 7.5. 3 3/4 and 1 7/8. This machine, the Akai GX4000D with the glass ferrite heads, only does 2 speeds, only does a 7.5 and the 3 3/4. But that's fine for me. My friend Peter recently bought, I guess it's been a few months now. He recently bought a 10-inch reel, a 10-inch reel-to-reel machine, and it's a beautiful thing. Absolutely next level studio grade. So much music, especially if you're rolling at 3 3/4 or 7.5 on that thing. Of course, it can do 15 as well. But yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I make my own tapes too. Absolutely. That's part of the fun. I love, and then you get, so I go from having this no intention of having all of my music on every format, and now I have to actively fight the idea like, well, I got the vinyl version of the Red Album. Now I need the CD version, and I've got the 8-track version I'm working on. I don't need that kind of redundancy, but sometimes it's fun. Sometimes it's fun to compare and contrast. And like you said, which pressing, which country of origin, all that stuff. I'm a mixtape addict. That's fun, dude. Making mixtapes and stuff for your own use is a blast. Absolutely. I love it. Never thought I would have come back to tape. I remember, oh man, so many years of having a cassette player and recorder or whatever, knowing that CDs were what the cool and rich kids were having, and being years out from having that. I got my first CD player in 1991. It was that Sony boombox. I still have it, or another one of the same model. And that was my only CD player until 1994. I got my Sony D131. That's how late I was to the CD world, and had that stuff for about 10 years. And then I moved on yet again. And I, definitely hitting middle age early, because I have this weird desire to relive my happy memories of things. And I like to accumulate some of those things that, to me, kind of, and this goes against what I was saying earlier, and I got to keep it in perspective. It's a personal struggle for me. But some of that stuff has such a beautiful, positive, happy memory for me that it's not necessarily just about the item. It's about the memories and of who gave it to me, or what I listened to, or what my life was like while I had that, or something like that. If that makes any sense. I remember when I got the CD player, the portable CD player, I felt like I had bought a Mercedes-Benz. And if you have a Mercedes-Benz, then I felt like I got myself a Maybach. And if you have a Maybach, I felt like I got myself a McLaren. I just felt like I had something that was super high end. And, of course, you don't want that first scratch. You want to be very careful. You don't drop it. It didn't have anti-skip or anything. It was very basic, which is par for the course for me. Go for the entry level of everything. But the fact that it was Sony, the fact that it was a CD player, it was nice, sleek and still is. I think it's one of the best, designs for a CD player ever. And I remember just like, going to spend the night at my friend's house and listening to our CDs and how premium that felt and how luxurious it felt to listen to pure digital music. And, it's the grass is always greener, right? So when you've got nothing but tapes for what seems like an eternity, hear about this newfangled digital thing where you can skip tracks. You don't have to rewind anymore. It lasts forever, quote unquote. At least we thought so at the time. And all of that was so intriguing to me. I literally remember telling my parents back, this would have been like 1990 because it was before I got the boombox. I was telling them I really want a CD player, and they're like, "Well, you don't really need that. You've got these tapes and things, and those are too expensive." And I said, "Well, I just want a CD or two, just so I can have. I don't even need the player." And I think that's ironically what a lot of people are doing with vinyl right now. They're like, just give me a record. I don't need a record player, Real Love was the very last Beatles song released. However, McCartney has said there are more in the works from Lennon's old cassettes. And that's another thing that's really interesting is there just seems to be more and more material that keeps coming out. And I saw this thing that surfaced this week where they were using AI to isolate Lennon's voice on some recordings that have never been released. And they were going to re-release the last Beatles song of history in the near future that McCartney was working on. Crazy. So I'm really enjoying it. So many of the songs, I can tell you if you're interested, what are some of my favorites? These are some of my favorite Beatles songs. If you have no interest, but these are so far the ones that I discovered. Tell me what you guys think, or tell me what I'm missing that I need. This is the stinky one. Hopefully, it doesn't smell. Again, just going off of the Red and Blue album compilation track listing. I like the early stuff. Initially, that was my favorite, back in the 90s, like Love Me Do and Please Please Me and stuff. I still like that. Sometimes I feel like that music is a bit harsh. And, and if I'm high energy activities and, moods, then maybe yes. But sometimes at the same time, hey, Julian, welcome in. Matthew, anybody else I missed, welcome in. I love all the greatest hits. I love all of that stuff. All My Loving, Can't Buy Me Love, Hard Day's Night, and I love her. All of that stuff. But one of my earliest favorites is 8 Days a Week. I listen to that on repeat. That's a great, great song. Ticket to Ride. Yesterday, I had to sing Yesterday when I was a kid in school up in front of all the other kids, and they laughed at me. My teacher was a big-time Beatles fan, and I'll never forget my mom's like, "Oh, they were laughing with you, darling. They weren't laughing at you. They were laughing at me." That's right. I'm still glad I did it. But the music was, I remember him closing his eyes, and it meant so much to him. And having been so deeply into other types of music, like classical, like jazz, like opera, I feel like I have a tendency to fall into an easy position of relegating rock and roll in my mind to being just junk trash music. Thank you very much. Hey, look, guys. Do you have your very own Record-ology coffee cup? Well, you can't have this one because it's out of print. But if you like the idea of a logo cup, somebody suggested that is available under our videos. There's a shelf. You can buy that. That's good. Grape soda. I had to think for a second what it was. It feels good on my throat. And so what I've learned this time around with the Beatles, and that's not to say I didn't like a lot of other rock music. I mean, I had Megadeth. I had Metallica. I know. I can't believe it. Shocker of shockers. I've listened to everything at one phase or another in my life. But what I'm learning is, and this may sound silly. Tell me if I'm silly about this, okay? But to me, the Beatles music that I've been enjoying, some of the best songs that I really enjoy, which seem this time to be trending towards more of their later stuff, are very delicate, intricate, articulate, gentle, sort of very well composed and intelligently created works of art. And instead of just like, oh yeah, we're just gonna yell and scream and slam our hands down on the guitar and all this stuff, it's really an art form. And I'm probably the very last one to the party on that. And I apologize if I am, but I just want to be transparent. I'm learning this as a journey. Awesome. I'm glad you picked up the mug. That's great. Michael says, Yellow Submarine was my first Beatles album way back in 72. So many more came after. I'm just getting back into albums, so I'm taking it slow, catching up. I have a hard time taking it slow. I have this tendency to want to hurry up and get it all now. Yeah. Okay. Help. Love that song. We Can Work It Out. That's a beautiful song. Day Tripper. Drive My Car. Some of these songs, like, I know they did some covers, although obviously the Lennon-McCartney, writing partnership is legendary. But, some of the covers that they did, Twist and Shout, and I don't think they wrote Twist and Shout, did they? That was a cover. Some of the covers are great, and some of the songs I was rediscovering, like, that was a Beatles song? I'd forgotten that was. But yeah, Day Tripper, Drive My Car, Michelle, one of my absolute favorites, Paperback Writer. Eleanor Rigby was probably my first favorite Beatles song. Yellow Submarine never gets old. I love that. There's so much ear candy in Yellow Submarine. It's just so much fun. I'm really hoping to catch Epcot on a night when they've got their Beatles tribute band there in the UK pavilion. They have another band there. I forget what they're called, but they play kind of a mixture of vintage UK rock. And I heard them playing the Wings McCartney song "Live and Let Die" a few weeks ago, and it was really cool to hear in person. Really, and it was a great band too, very powerful. And it just is so cool to hear that in the UK pavilion. That's a really cool thing too. All the people that staff those pavilions are from those countries. So you can like legit go to the pubs and the restaurants and the stores and listen to these people talking about different things from the real country. And it gives you the sense of being there to a degree. Someday I'm going though in real life. SP says, here's a question from albums you came across. What albums do you come across most in the thrifts? I need to do another. I think I did a video about this. So I always come across, and this is the next question. Are all the albums that we always come across at the thrift stores there because they sucked and everybody wanted to donate them? Or were they so popular and they were so good that they sold so many copies that they just ended up in everybody's house? I kind of think that's what it is. But some of the artists I really love. You're not going to go find the Beatles. If you ever have, then you've kind of won the lottery of life. You're not going to find Rolling Stones. You're not going to find, popular music. Most of the time, it's going to be the Longines Symphony. It's going to be Jim Neighbors sings Christmas carols. It's going to be, Crystal Gale. I see Crystal Gale all the time. Barbra Streisand, and I love Barbra Streisand. You're going to see, I already said Jim Neighbors. You're going to see Herb Alpert, the whipped cream thing pops up quite a bit, although not the most. I think that's a bit of a joke, but it does pop up quite a bit. I actually have a Herb Alpert box set. I think one of you guys gave me, and I love it. It's good on the changer. There's a handful of things that just keep popping up. I had a joke on the channel, and I haven't really done this running gag in a while, but I had this running gag that I always would come across this one singer. What is her name? Oh shoot, she was from Colorado. All right, I got to look this up. I hate it when I'm in blank in the middle of a story. My feeble elderly brain is running out of storage. Let's see here. So this is 70s Colorado folk female singer. And the name is Judy Collins. Judy Collins. I had this running gag that she was my friendly adversary. And of course, she's not in real life. I don't know her at all. Don't know her from Adam. Although somebody in my family actually did have a not so pleasant run in with this person. So we kind of said that's why. But we had a friendly dig about when Judy Collins would always come up in the thrift store. I would zoom in on it with that dun, 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 dun music. Whoa, Matthew with a super chat, dude. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Matthew says, do you listen to any of the Beatles podcasts? There's a lot of good ones out there. Ranking the Beatles is my favorite. Okay, I'm going to take it. I'm literally going to write this down. Rice Cooker, welcome in. You're right on time, man. No worries at all. So what is it called? Ranking the Beatles. There's so many good podcasts out there that I just literally have a shortness of time. So I almost kind of hate discovering new good ones because it's like, oh no, I got to fit that in, but I got to check that out. I want to learn. I've been watching a lot of that Parlophone YouTube channel. That guy knows a lot. Gary says there is a pop music, then there's popular music. Barbie Girl is pop, but not compared to the Beatles. And then I hear that too. You know, they refer to the Beatles as rock and roll, and then they refer to it as pop. I figure like that's always a sliding scale, because there's people that view, if you were to ask a non-opera fan what they think of the three tenors, they'd be like, well, that's some serious opera there. That's pretty deep. And then if you talk to somebody who's into quote unquote real opera, they'd be like, oh, that's pop. That's just, those guys aren't serious. That's just for the masses. That's not legit opera. It's not proper opera. So I feel like there's always a delineation. Some people think Eminem is a pop singer, and then some people think it's hardcore hip hop. You know what I mean? Like I think it's all figurative. I've heard it both ways. Pop and anything. Pop is popular, right? So jazz was pop music. Rock's been pop music for many decades. Barbie Girl. I'm a Barbie girl. For my listening chair, it says A Day in the Life is my favorite album by them. If I find these albums in good deals, I will try to snag them if they're like a good price. I'm starting to research and learn enough to know what is a good price. Octopus's Garden is my favorite Beatles song. Maximo says, if you decide to get into the albums, make sure to get the British versions for the early albums, since Capitol really, and that's what I understand, that Capitol didn't order the master tapes. So if you buy a UK pressing of a Beatles album, it's like a first generation matrix off of the master tape. Whereas if you get a Capitol release, especially a Capitol release on a Capitol label, it is a dub. It'll be like a second or third generation dub, or sometimes an alternate version. Apparently, the Capitol version of the Red album is got a bunch of weird versions that the UK Red album didn't have. And that Parlophone guy, goes and ranks all of the versions, every version. It's amazing. I'll tell you which ones sound the best, which ones don't. So this blue album here has a Capitol matrix stamp, says mastered at Capitol. So I'm guessing but it has Apple record label on the actual disc, and it has Apple up here. So I'm guessing this is a USA Apple release with, it happened to be made at Capitol. Somewhere I read said that this was like a 1976 reissue. My version of the Red album, and I know I can check out the matrix numbers on Discogs. I haven't had a chance to do that yet. That will tell you probably more. This version has a handwritten matrix. And that's another thing I read, is that the stamped matrix numbers and the dead wax are usually the UK pressings, whereas the handwritten ones are usually the Capitol US pressings. This one is just handwritten. There's no indication. There is a maker's mark, but I don't know which. I haven't recognized it. And then my friend Peter's got, he's got the Red album on a Sterling Sound edition, and I think it might have been pressed in Jacksonville. I'm not sure. I'm just learning all this stuff. I just put my Red album on my record player. That's awesome. Are you guys TikTok people? If you are, check Record-ology out on TikTok. But there is this person that all they do is they go live and they play Christmas albums with the Christmas tree in the background. I think it's an LP60. It's a very kind of awkwardly close shot. They don't say anything. Somehow they must be doing it to be monetized, because, I mean, unless they're just super passionate about it and want to spend all day, every day. They're always on there. Some people just go live on TikTok all day, every day, like it's their job. And this person does this every day. And you would think to yourself, oh, that sounds easy enough to do. I can put something interesting on. So I tried doing some lives on TikTok from like my Vita Nola phonograph or from other record players, and do the same thing. And I get like 3 people on the live. And that person will have like 1,500 to 2,500 people on them. Like, what the heck? Maximo says, what I meant was that up until 66, Capitol released completely different albums, which were basically compilations of singles and album tracks instead of the real UK LPs. I have heard that as well. So the mono box set apparently has completely different albums, because they're the UK original legit UK albums. And some of the albums, quote unquote, that we know here in the US were US only compilations. I had heard that. Rice Cooker says, not all first UK pressings are good. Like stereo is better than mono. for help, but mono is better than stereo for Hard Day's Night. I would look for 70s copies, though. SP says, so I heard the Beatles releasing the final album. Yeah, we were just talking about that with a little help from AI to isolate Lennon's voice on some recording. And originally when I heard that, I was like, wait, are they literally like, is it going to be like a deep fake where they record his sound from his voice in other songs? Oh, yeah, oh, yeah, oh, yeah. And like recreate it to sing something he never sang. But I think it's the AI was used to isolate his vocal from the background track. A little less creepy, but still interesting. And yeah, McCartney's leading that. And it sounds like an interesting thing that it'll be the final Beatles song. Not a full album. My understanding is it's a single song. Matthew says, yes, 12 tracks instead of 14, an odd single thrown in. It's just so confusing. And there's so much into it. And I could see why. I'd heard about there being Beatles scholars and stuff, which superficially sounds kind of silly, but then you're like, okay, I can see why now because it's a whole thing. And I've noticed myself personally have learned levels of detail like that on other things I've learned before. Like I can go through my Glenn Miller stuff. Somebody's asked me to do a collection or overview of my Glenn Miller stuff. I haven't done one in a couple of years. And I could tell you this one came out this year and it's good for that, but it's bad for that. And this one's got fake stereo as many of the 50s ones did or 60s ones did. And this is, this one was the first true mono release in 15 years and all stuff. So you do start to accumulate this, but I am just a baby in the world of Beatles. So I look forward to learning more from you. And like I said, I'm not hell-bent on accumulating, but I would like to it'd be cool to say I put together a collection of all the main albums. And if you listen to the anthology, and the vinyl anthology is $200-$300 a disc. So I'll probably never have that. But the CD anthologies, I wish I knew where my old Beatles CDs are because I had since lost them over the years. I don't know why I did that. I'm hoping that when I did go into big band, which was a big renaissance moment for me, and that's a separate story for a separate day, that I didn't like donate or sell all my rock and roll stuff. Because like my Metallica, my Mix-a-Lot, my Megadeth stuff also does no longer exist in my collection. Not that they are comparable to the Beatles in any way, but I think I might have downsized that portion of the collection when I was making the move into the big band music. And that was, again, a separate story for a separate day. Oh, really? So I had heard about that too. Yeah, the fake stereo. Yeah, and that plagued the RCA 60s Glenn Miller releases too. I can listen to some fake stereo if it's like just a touch of reverb, but if it's like the channel offset with the phase shift and all that stuff and the high-low pass, like full-blown fake stereo is a bit much. But I was going to say is that the Beatles anthology CD has so much rare material that's tempting to pick up on CD again. There's 3 of them, I think. And I know on the first anthology one, it's got some crazy stuff on there. It's got like the full Decca audition. I know about that. You may be surprised. I read about that. I'm literally like Wikipedia level knowledge about the Beatles. Learned a lot from Wikipedia, actually. But I know about the Decca audition that they failed, and the fact that the tape copy that exists is arguably a dub and all this stuff, and there may be a private collector that owns the first generation. But they've got all that stuff. You can listen to those Decca recordings, those early Decca audition recordings, and a bunch of just like studio chatter and noodling around and background behind the scenes stuff. I love that. So I think I would like to find those anthologies again just for that. Okay, guys, any final questions or comments? Just wanted to hang out with you guys for a while. Rice Cooker says, I would get the Beatles early years, bunch of songs with Tom Sheridan. John Lennon sings the first track. It sounds amazing. Either version you get. Okay, thanks for the tip. From my listening chair says, if you ever saw the movie Game of Death, did cropped out Bruce Lee's face on other actor's body and released that movie. Really? That's weird. That's very strange. Maximo says fake stereo is also very common. Yep, we talked about that. Rice Cooker says the early years has material from 60 to 62. And I've learned about a Quarryman, things like that. Very interesting. If you like the anthology albums, then you will love the anniversary box sets, says Maximo. Okay, thank you for the tip on that. Thank you. My friends, thank you for further educating me. I've got notes. I got homework to do. I'll definitely share my progress as we keep going. as long as there's somebody that wants to listen to me talk about it. I hope you're enjoying the journey. We got a lot of other stuff planned. Shot yesterday a Record-ology episode that will hopefully be posted tomorrow. I don't think it'll come out tonight. I still need to grab intros and outros and a final thoughts clip on that. But I've said this before, and you're like, yeah, right. How many times can you come across something you've never seen before? This one took the cake. In fact, I'm going to tell you why it took the cake, because you're at the end of a live. There's only 18 of you on at this point, and I thank you. If you're watching the replay, then that's good too. But inner circle people here, this is the true friends of the channel are this far into a live, an hour and 10 minutes. So it's a Skywind type of mechanism on a brand I've never heard of before, but it comes equipped with a record clamp on a belt-driven Skywind plastic mechanism. Very strange. And then we ran it through the testing, and it performed not like I expected it to. But that'll be a fun show. I hope. I need to edit that. I'll probably edit that tonight, and then I got to get a couple clips, and then it'll be ready to publish, hopefully tomorrow sometime. Well, my friends, thank you. Happy record hunting. We will see you guys next time. Thank you.